With the upcoming release of Andy Bogart, the first DLC of Fatal Fury, I've been asking myself what can SNK exactly do so that their game and also them as a developer and a company can make a huge comeback. When Fatal Fury was first announced, it felt like an immense project that was really trying to compete with the likes of Capcom, Bandai Namco, and of course Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8. And boy, I was wrong by feeling like that because this game did not reach that scale at all. It's not even close. And you can say that it is a huge flop. And it makes me super sad and disappointed because not only I love SNK games and their characters, but also I want more high quality competition in the fighting game genre. I don't want, like 2 or 4 high quality AAA games. I want 8, 12, 16, so that we as fighting game fans and consumers of the genre can get the best games possible and developers actually get pushed to release the best products possible and not mediocre ones. So let's discuss in this video what SNK and Fatal Fury needs to actually succeed in the future. So let's actually start with Fatal Fury, since that is the game that we can play at the moment. I would argue that in terms of gameplay, it is actually really good. It can easily compete with Street Fighter 6 and Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. It is really deep, engaging, and is also fairly easy and accessible since it has some very easy characters and simple and straightforward mechanics. But the problem is that when you start looking at the game outside of the gameplay, it struggles a ton with quality of life features. And the thing with all these features that maybe Fatal Fury lacks is that 1, they are actually pretty significant, and 2, other modern fighting games actually have them, so why could SNK not work on them for the release of the game? For example, the UI of the game, it is very weird, it feels clunky, it has really a strange negative edge logic, it is not the best in terms of functionality, and that is why it exists. UIs exist for functionality, and even though I like the art style on it, it is not enough to justify how it works. So why exactly did it release with that UI even when people complain about it since the first beta? It is really weird, and it is a first bad sign about the game as a product overall. Then another basic feature that is really important in any fighting game, and it should be really high quality by this point, and that is training mode. The game has a training mode, of course, and it is functional, but it is fairly hard to use, it's not that intuitive, and it doesn't have that many features. And you could maybe think that on 2025, after 30 years of developing fighting games, we could get a high quality training mode like the one that SF6 or even Tekken 8 have. Then number 3, one of the main reasons why I don't play this game as much as I would like, even though I love it, and that is the rank point system. Because you have one basically point related to your profile, and it doesn't matter which character you play, when both, for example, Tekken 8 and Street Fighter 6, the biggest fighting games out there, have an individual by character point system so that you can play any character that you want and like without suffering in terms of performance and your rank experience. And it is something, again, very basic that adds a ton of replayability to fighting games. So why exactly could they not release this with the game instead of doing it so late? Because they said that they are gonna do it, but it's probably gonna be by the end of the year. And we all know that the most relevant moment for a fighting game to succeed is before release. Everything needs to be present in day 1. Then another big criticism, at least for me, is the single player mode. I know that a ton of SNK fans liked episodes of Southtown because it has a ton of art and lore, but if you are like a general, video game enjoyer, and you maybe like some fighting games from a more casual perspective, and you bought, for example, Street Fighter 6 or Tekken 8 because you like the graphics and the single player experience, do you know what this game offers? It is simply the fighting game, but with some RPG basic mechanics. It doesn't even affect the gameplay really that much. And do you know what else you can buy for $59.99, which was the price of this game in the US? You can buy Baldur's Gate 3. If you want to play a freaking RPG game, or you can buy Black Myth Wukong or Elden Ring. So how exactly are people gonna prioritize fighting games as a product when the single player mode is just the game with numbers on top of it? It's really, really ridiculous. And at this point, fighting game developers need to understand that their audience should be everyone and not only fighting game fans, so that they maybe can get a scam by selling them a single player mode that is not worth $59.99 at all. And we all know that, people buy fighting games to play online and whatever, but the single player should be high quality. It should be good. We are, on 2025, not on the 90s, so it needs to be better. And well, what is the place where I'm going with all of this exactly? What I mean with this is that the next time SNK releases an open beta for maybe KOF 16 or whatever new game they do, everything that I just talked about needs to be figured out day one. It doesn't matter if it is their open beta and it is supposed to be, to try things and see bugs and mistakes. Doesn't matter. Why? Because people don't trust SNK anymore. After KOF 15 and after this game, it is clear that SNK has a problem internally with the development of their fighting games. They don't have maybe the people to have everything, ready to go, and people are not gonna buy an SNK game unless it has all of this ready the first time they try it. Because sadly, it is the truth for fighting games that the first impression is the most important one. So the next time SNK makes an open beta for the next big fighting game, everything that I just said and discussed, to right here to this moment needs to be ready to go. It's the only way that SNK can actually make a big game and make it succeed. Now let's move into some more general considerations, because as I said earlier in the video, it's not only Fatal Fury and how to make it have a comeback, but it is also SNK overall as a company, as a developer, and how exactly are they going to succeed in the upcoming years, taking into account that they are probably going to release more fighting games. And the first point for me is gotta be, marketing and business decisions overall. Like Ganachi and Cristiano being on Fatal Fury was a big mistake. Even though people like Ganachi now, it was really bad at the moment when they released the trailers, and they basically announced that these characters were going to be in the game. And it is very obvious that people were not happy with it, at least the hardcore fans and the people that are actually going to play your game. So I think that for the next games, SNK needs to make better decisions around what they do with these weird guest characters, if they keep having them, and basically maybe add them as like free updates later in the lifespan of the game and stuff like that. Imagine a world in which Fatal Fury, for example, had 2 guest characters in the base roster, but they were not Ronaldo and Ganachi, and they were actually Ken and Chun-Li. And Ken and Chun-Li, instead of being DLC, were part of the base roster for the game, and then Ganachi and Ronaldo were, for example, a free update, and the 2 slots of DLC were other characters. Do you know how much that would have helped the game? How much more successful it could have been only with that change? And I think that, SNK just dropped the ball with this specifically, and for all their upcoming fighting games, they need to have a different strategy, and they need to be able to appeal to a larger audience, but not through something like this that basically neglects the older fans. I think that it is possible to make a marketing strategy and business decisions that can basically contemplate the larger audience, the casuals, but also the hardcore fans, and they clearly did not that now specifically. So in the future, we probably need something different. And then another big point for SNK to actually make a comeback and be at the top again, and some people are gonna be, maybe thinking that I'm too exaggerated, but I do really believe that this is a necessity. I think that SNK needs to develop their next big fighting game on Unreal Engine 5. KOF 15, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, and Samurai Showdown 2019 were all developed, if I'm not mistaken, on Unreal Engine 4. So they are basically a step before the industry. They need to go up and basically show to people that there can be a cutting-edge developer. And sadly, whether you like it or not, people don't trust SNK at the moment. They think that when they develop fighting games and then release them, they are going to be a flop and also a mess. And sadly, people have been partially right. Like, Fatal Fury was a mess with some stuff on release, like for example Ganachi, Ronaldo, and the marketing strategy, and all these, basic features that maybe the game does not have or it lacks. And also people, whether you like it or not, again, buy fighting games because of how they look. People bought Tekken 8 and Street Fighter 6 because they love the franchise, but also because the game looks really well. And games like KOF 15, like Fatal Fury, like Samurai Showdown, they don't look bad. They have a really good art style and art concept and direction, but they don't have a high level of graphical fidelity. It's not there. And I really do believe that if SNK wants to get back at the top as a developer and a company, they need to show like their next big fighting game, the first teaser or the first trailer at EVO, for example, and people have to react in a way in which they cannot ignore the game. Maybe they see the game, and it looks so good. It is such an insanely high graphical fidelity project, just like Tekken 8, for example, that you just have to give it an opportunity, even if you don't trust the dev anymore. So I really believe that this is a step that SNK needs to take. It doesn't even matter if they need to like externalize some of the projects that they're working on, like in some way they have to get into a point in which they make a game on Unreal Engine 5, or they of course can work on another engine that has that potential for graphical fidelity. And they can still do it, like comic style or manga style, like Fatal Fury, that's great, but the graphical fidelity simply needs to be at the highest level possible, and be a cutting edge, industry level game. And then the last point I want to talk about around the idea of SNK making a comeback in general is that they need to deliver like a genre-defining hit when it comes to a fighting game. If they need to release a new modern game that has the scale of Tekken 8 and SF6, because even if people don't like games like SF6 or Tekken 8 in the future, or they don't regard them as the best in the franchise, they are going to be remembered as one of the best, modern fighting games in a specific era. And I think that SNK needs to do that. They need to create a game that is actually a cultural hit, just like those others. And I don't know exactly what you need to do to basically have that. Like, of course, you need better general features. You need to have a strong, content at launch. You need to have a good single player mode, amazing graphics. The package is there, but I think that there is more into it related to the gameplay, because SNK games, Fatal Fury, KOF, they feel great, they have amazing gameplay, but they still feel like an old fighting game. They feel like an experience at the core from the arcades, and even though I like that and I think that it is unique and it creates a very amazing experience in terms of gameplay, maybe people don't get that much into SNK games exactly because of that. And not only because of all the other features, but maybe because the games are too hard still, or they need to be more accessible, or they need to be more modern, audience oriented. I don't know, I don't have the exact answer for that, but I do feel like it is a problem. And I do think that if SNK wants to get back at the top, they need to deliver a genre hit game that has all the modern audience needs that other fighting games have been able to identify and give to people. So let me know in the comments, what do you think SNK needs to do to save their future as a company and a developer, so that maybe we can get more amazing SNK fighting games in the next upcoming years. And see you on the next video, guys.